Media is saying about all this, that this trip could be a bust before it's even happened.
Senate Democrats block a GOP measure that would require doctors to treat babies born alive after a failed abortion. The president calling it one of the most shocking votes in the history of our country.
This Green New Deal could cost up to $93 trillion.
Is it okay to still have children?
She just keeps spewing this stuff, and there's nobody to tell her no.
Democrats in the House are forcing a vote on a resolution that would stop the national emergency.
This is not about politics. It's not about partisanship. It's about patriotism.
But what's interesting, he says the president's not going to build this wall. This wall is already being built.
Jon Stewart's pushing Congress to restock the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund.
The Trump Justice Department is doing an excellent job. So now it's Congress's job to fund it properly.
I'm going to adjust my schedule now to your schedule. Right to a Fox News alert. President Trump is set to land in Hanoi in just a matter of hours for his big summit with Kim Jong-un.
The president gearing up for Summit 2.0 with the North Korean leader.
Our own Ed Henry is live in Hanoi with what we can expect. Ed, good morning.
Good to see you all. It's interesting because Kim Jong-un is now on the ground here in Hanoi. It took him about 3 days, that train ride from Pyongyang to here in Hanoi. He got a red carpet welcome, as you noted. That train, by the way, is armored. He obviously concerned about his grip on power. This dictator gets the red carpet welcome. His security detail was very aggressive about trying to not let the U.S. media and others to get photos of him and whatnot. His goal is to try and rebuild his shattered economy. He wants to lift U.S. economic sanctions that were imposed on North Korea because of its nuclear program. President Trump, though, of course, doesn't want to lift those U.S. sanctions until Kim Jong-un actually follows through on the promises made on round one in terms of their summitry, which was back in Singapore last June, where they signed a document that was just sort of a framework that Kim Jong-un was eventually going to move towards denuclearization, dismantling his nuclear program. He has stopped the nuclear testing. We don't see rockets flying over Japan and elsewhere for now. That is a positive step for the president in terms of pushing back on Kim Jong-un and trying to give diplomacy a chance. President Trump, by the way, still aboard Air Force One at this hour on his way here to Hanoi. Of course, we expect him to land in just the next couple of hours. You see him there at Joint Base Andrews. 2 refueling stops to get here, such a long journey of 18 hours or so. Bottom line is, before he left, the president expressed optimism about what they can accomplish.
And I think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization. We're going to have a signing summit, which is even better. So hopefully we can get that completed, but we're getting very, very close.
Now, you've seen some media outlets suggesting a nightmare scenario, in their words, would be the president giving in to Kim Jong-un. Actually, the nightmare scenario would be a nuclear war, something that the president has pushed back on and is actually saying to the world, let's give peace a chance, guys.
Ed, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. So they will sit down together tomorrow. The president is supposed to arrive this morning at 9:15, a little delayed this morning.
Right. His train goes 37 miles an hour. So it took,
that's Kim Jong-un, yeah.
Yeah, the president's plane goes a little faster. But
it goes 631 miles per hour. I actually looked it up this morning. And maximum speed, Air Force One, 631 miles
faster than a train.
Wow.
Then a 35-mile-an-hour train.
Because of security purposes? He was
no,
scared
because
to fly?
he's a dictator who's afraid to fly. Yeah.
Right. Well,
let's
Ed
remember
Henry,
the stakes of this.
I heard Ed yesterday say that he has to bring his own potty on because he's scared that when he goes to the bathroom, he doesn't want anyone to get DNA.
I would not mind not having heard that story. I'd really rather not think about that.
I think it's fascinating, though. They're so terrified that someone's going to do something to them because they are dictators.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so the other thing to point out is they're talking about incremental steps. Are they going to lay out a roadmap, some type of gradual denuclearization? Are they going to talk about any type of liaisons between the two countries without setting up embassies? Are they going to talk about ending the war or looking for remains? There are 3 things they could do kind of easily. The 4th thing about dismantling a major plutonium manufacturing plant, that would be even bigger. Are they ready for that?
It's just going to take some time. You can't expect too much. This is the 2nd meeting, and this is a lot farther than we've been in the past, and they haven't used or tested any missiles for 2 years.
Right. But we see what Libya did. Libya said, come and get it. We showed up in 3 years. We had it out. There was all those missiles were sitting in North Carolina. We see what Ukraine did after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Eastern Bloc. They said, we don't want nuclear weapons. Come get them. South Africa did something very similar. That's not going to happen here, but it has been done before.
Right, they're continuing to build, just not testing.
So we're going to watch this very, very closely. The president's scheduled to land about 9:30, a little bit late, left the United States a little bit late. We will follow this. Any new developments, we'll bring it to you. But there's an important piece of legislation yesterday voted on in the U.S. Senate. A pro-life bill. It's called the Born Alive Act. What it would mean is a doctor is obligated to ensure that a newborn infant in any sort of procedure, if born alive, is protected as a result. So a pretty common sense piece of pro-life legislation. Well, ultimately, it came to a vote, and it did not pass. It needed a 60-vote threshold. Here are the list of Democrats who ultimately voted against the Born Alive Act. Again, an infant born alive should be kept alive is the premise of this bill. Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Sherrod Brown, Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. It is orthodoxy, guys. On the left, in the Democrat Party, you don't vote against anything that Planned Parenthood doesn't want you to vote against.
Well, this bill ensures that if a woman tries to have an abortion and the baby is born alive, then the doctor would have to admit that child into the hospital. And what is the alternative? These Democrats are okay with letting the child die. The mother gets to decide. They have, is this what the governor was talking about when he said we would make the child comfortable and then we would have a discussion and decide what to do with this child?
Those people you mentioned, there were 44 Democrats who voted against it, but they were all these people. The one list you went through are all people running for president or almost virtually considered running for president, like in the case of Sherrod Brown. And the rest have basically declared. For the Democrats who voted for the Born Alive Act, it was Manchin, Casey, and Doug Jones of Alabama. If you want to know the mindset of Democrats, Senator Tammy Duckworth says this is an attempt to bully doctors out of giving reproductive care. We know the partisan extremist playbook comes out of one based not in fact but in fiction, steeped in ignorance and misogyny. Senator Ben Sasse says, are you kidding me? I propose this. I'm just saying that if a baby is born, they should do everything to keep that baby alive.
Yeah, this is the kind of issue where no side wants to give an inch, and as a result, common sense goes out the window.
It's just interesting that so many of those individuals care about the children and the women down on the border, but yet when it comes to our own babies being born alive, they want to make the decision not to allow that child to survive.
Yeah, well
said. It's just unheard of. The president was tweeting about it. He said this will be remembered as one of the most shocking votes in the history of Congress. If there is one thing we should all agree on, it's protecting the lives of innocent babies. There was another tweet he put out, too. It said the Democratic position on abortion is now so extreme that they don't mind executing babies after birth.
So listen to this. A survey by that was just put out by Marist said 80% of Americans support abortion being limited to the first 3 months of pregnancy, an increase of 5 percentage points since last month. Things are changing on the pro-life, pro-choice debate in this country, and a lot of people say it's down to the 3D imaging that comes down with sonograms.
Special interests, though, are still very powerful. Special interests can maintain a grip on an issue when the people have long since been on the other side.
So 80%, according to that, 80% are fine with it within the first 3 months, but then after that?
Yeah, they're not
it's basically a dead heat with pro-life. 48% of Americans identify as pro-life, 47% as pro-choice.
But it's all about
dead heat.
The first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. This is the fourth trimester that they're talking about.
All
in the
right,
U.S.
let's switch to something else extremely controversial, and that's the Green Deal. It's put out, and if I can quote Dick Durbin roughly, it is so confusing. He read it 3 times. A Democrat from Illinois, he says he doesn't even know what it means. Most other Democrats, especially those running for president, are going along with it, this Green New Deal, and now we have a cost to it. It's going to cost $93 trillion. That's $600,000 all of you are responsible for, but we have no choice. The world will end in 10 years.
And that's according to a nonpartisan group, the Congressional Budget Office. What's interesting, though, when you hear the baby story, it looks like these Democrats don't seem to care about babies born in America, but they do care about the planet. In fact, AOC is now even wondering if people should just stop having children. Listen to this.
Our planet is going to face disaster if we don't turn this ship around. And so it's basically like there's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult. And it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children?
This is an unvarnished perspective of the new left. The orthodoxy of the left, take this to the bank, is the religion of climate change. They truly believe it's World War II, the world's going to end in 10 years. As a result, our economy is $20 trillion annually. They want to spend $93 trillion to do radical control of our entire economy, and it's because they believe, I mean, at some level, they believe this is the most
Kamala Harris
important
said,
issue.
If it's $600,000 per family, per household, Kamala Harris said Medicaid for all is not about the cost, but rather the return on investment.
Yeah, food security for every living person, $1.5 billion. Guaranteed green housing between $1.6 and $4.2 trillion, and $5.4 trillion that net zero emissions for the transportation network, which means grounding of flights and the building up of high-speed trains, which has gone so well out in California.
You forgot the best part of it. People who are unwilling to work.
Right. They now admit that that was a mistake that was on their website, but at least they admit it was there.
Kim Jong-un riding on trains.
So Rush Limbaugh wonders, like all of you, why do Democrats kowtow to a 29-year-old or 28-year-old when they know that this is not plausible? Listen.
She just keeps spewing this stuff, and there's nobody to tell her no. There isn't a single person in the Democrat Party with any guts to tell her no, regardless of Cortez's ignorance and her just blatantly being wrong about practically everything she is passionate about. There's nobody on the side of reason who can combat her ideas. I'm talking about in electoral politics. Her ideas take off because there's nobody willing to say, you don't know what you're talking about. Be quiet, come back when you grow up.
Mike Bloomberg did, and Howard Schultz did. Two grown-ups.
Dianne Feinstein tried, walked it back. Listen, it's like your kid spewing nonsense at you, and you're like, quiet, learn something before you come back to me. They're just letting her go. Yeah, I say keep going.
Remember, even
Keep
Whoopi
talking.
Goldberg said that on The View.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's who I go by. 13 minutes after the hour.
She normally is on the side of the Democrats.
Right.
So.
Meanwhile, straight ahead. Speaking of climate change, Bernie Sanders has sounded the alarm.
Climate change is a global crisis. It's an existential threat to our country and the entire planet.
So how does he explain spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to fly on private jets?
Plus, a 7-year-old...
Climate change is a global crisis. Climate change is real, is an existential threat to our country and the entire planet. We have got to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to sustainable energy.
That's Bernie. Turns out Senator Bernie Sanders is so concerned about climate change that he reportedly demanded private jets while campaigning for Hillary Clinton in 2016. According to the FEC, Federal Election Commission, Sanders spent over $300,000 on private flights in the 2 years following the election. Here to react is Mark Morano. He's the executive director of ClimateDepot.com and the author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. Mark, thanks for being here. So walk us into the mindset that is, I'm the cheerleader against climate change, yet I demand private jets.
Yeah, this is amazing. You got Beyonce, Jay-Z, Katy Perry, and Bernie. What do they all have in common? The Hillary Clinton campaign all paid them to fly around and campaign for her in private jets. Bernie Sanders has made his career out of what they say keeping fossil fuels in the ground. The problem is he can't keep from using them lavishly in the air. This is rank hypocrisy on the level that I think only Al Gore could compete. Because outside of Al Gore in electoral politics, Bernie was the guy as the #1 climate guru, and here he is, just can't keep himself out of these private jets. He could have flown commercial.
Mark, this is what we just played what Bernie Sanders said on the past. This is what he said yesterday. New sound. Listen.
Okay.
When I talk about human rights, you know what that also means? It means that our kids and grandchildren have the human right to grow up in a planet that is healthy and habitable. Climate change is real and caused by human activity.
Is this the religion of the left?
It is. In fact, the UN climate chief has actually said when he stepped down, quote, global warming is my religion, unquote. And for Bernie to do this and have this kind of hypocrisy, this has a corrosive effect. The public doesn't buy what they're selling when they do this. Bernie's only shooting himself. And what's ironic is the Hillary campaign, they're eating themselves here. You rarely ever see climate activists on the left pointing fingers and going after each other for hypocrisy. This is a rare moment to see this. Usually it's, climate skeptics and others pointing out the hypocrisy.
Yeah, no, they're all trying to climb on the top of the heap together. Mark Morano, the book is The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you've ever driven across the country, it takes a long time. It's not fun. I'd rather take a flight. Mark, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, President Trump is on his way to Vietnam right now for the second summit with Kim Jong-un. High stakes. What needs to happen to make sure North Korea actually gets rid of its nukes? Our panel is here to discuss. They're going to talk to Brian next.
Good morning to you. We're back with some quick headlines now. Univision's Jorge Ramos has been freed after being detained in Venezuela. He says an interview with disputed President Nicolas Maduro came to a head after showing him a video Maduro didn't like. It shows Venezuelans picking food off garbage trucks. Ramos and 6 others were detained for 2 hours. Meanwhile, Vice President Pence met with opposition leader Juan Guaido in Colombia, where he announced new sanctions against 4 Maduro associates. An American held captive in Yemen is free after 18 months. In a statement, President Trump thanked the United Arab Emirates for playing a role in bringing Danny Burch home. He added, quote, Danny's recovery reflects the best of what the United States and his partners can accomplish. The Texas oil worker was living in Yemen and married to a Yemeni national when he was reportedly kidnapped by rebel fighters in 2017. Let's look at your headlines. Brian, I'll send it to you.
All right. Here we go. A Fox News alert. In just a matter of hours, President Trump will set to arrive in Hanoi for Summit 2.0, or Super Summit number 2. Kim Jong-un, the denuclearization talks is what we are hoping for. We don't know exactly what he is hoping for. Here to weigh in on is our panel of prognosticators, playing the role of Lisa Booth. Also, New York State Young Republicans Outreach Chair Joseph Pinion playing the middle seat. And Democratic strategist Rochelle Ritchie is here. Rochelle, what do you expect today?
Well, look, I will say I hope that the president is successful with getting North Korea to denuclearize. However, I'm not that confident considering this is a regime that has made promises before in the past. We'll remember under the Clinton administration, they had promised to freeze their nuclear weapons program, only for the Bush administration to find out that they were using a loophole to continue to make these products. So I'm really not too confident, and that's not to say that the president does not have the ability to do this. It's just to simply say that I think that he should dial back the fact, on Twitter he said, North Korea is no longer a nuclear threat. Well, that's not really true. And I think this is going to be really a step-by-step process to get us to that point, and I'm hoping that he is successful.
So do you have an increment step, Joe, that works?
Well, look, I think that you have to get at the very least, some type of Ronald Reagan-esque, you have trust but verify actual, step-by-step process towards denuclearization. At least.
So you want to see a framework. You want to see a chart.
There has to be with some type of framework and also with some type of actual meaningful clawbacks. Because again, I think realistically, obviously just giving North Korea the silent treatment was not working. But there has to be some type of way where we, as a nation, can have some type of framework to see what's going to happen.
Joe, silent treatment is not right. It's strategic patience. Please get that right, all right?
Just don't give me the
Lisa, how about this? Liaison offices between both sides. Let's have international experts hunt for remains from the 1950 to 1953 war. And then maybe a third pillar, we talk about inspectors. What do you see?
Well, we'll see. I mean, look, I think we're still pretty early in the talks, right? So I don't know if we're going to get that much concrete steps out of this meeting right now.
That's a problem, though.
But I know that we're holding the meeting in Vietnam to basically show North Korea what could be, in the sense that we were once at war with Vietnam. Now their economy is getting stronger. That being said, if having nukes is if having nukes means stability for Kim Jong-un in power, why would he want to give those up, even for increased economic stability? And also, I think the concern here is there's a lot of challenges in dealing with North Korea. You look at the fact that China is key to North Korea regarding trade. You look at, there's been a study out in 2017, 52 countries were found in violation of UN sanctions. Also, military options aren't great given the proximity of Seoul in South Korea and the amount of deaths and demise that could lead to.
They got the ultimate backstop in China. For example, if they give up the nuclear weapons, China does not want South Korea to dominate that peninsula. China goes, I got your back. You're not going to be invaded. There's some type of monitors there. And then in comes the aid and in comes the possible investment. Meanwhile, let's change gears just a little bit. Every day we have a new Democratic candidate and somebody else speaking out. Senator Gillibrand speaking out yesterday about climate change. Listen to how she quantifies it.
Let's just take what the Green New Deal is. Global climate change, severe weather, is the greatest threat to humanity we have. Scientists have just reached the conclusion that it's happening far quicker than we know. And what New Yorkers know and what people all across this country know is when severe weather hits, people die. It destroys communities.
And she wants to approach this like NASA's race to the moon. What do you think, Rochelle?
I watched this interview, and I wasn't really pleased with her performance or her answers at all. She didn't really answer the question, so I'm still not really sure exactly where her stance is as far as paying for things such as the Green New Deal. The idea of climate change, yes, climate change obviously is a very serious issue. However, how we address climate change, we have to have sensible solutions, and I don't think that necessarily imposing a tax on billionaires is the way to go about it.
And pretending that every rainstorm is the world coming to an end.
Yeah, that was
also
also very strange to me.
And listen to this. I was fascinated by this poll, but not surprised at number 2. If when asked, the Pew people, and most people respect this poll, what matters most to you, it is number 1, the economy. Number 2, health care. Again, by the way. Number 3, education. Number 4, terrorism. Number 5, social security. Look at climate change. What's going on there, Joe?
I think the reality is that it always is going to be the economy stupid. That's what we have to deal with as a nation.
Then people got to be happy.
Well, look, I think that America is finding out what New Yorkers have known for a long time about Kirsten Gillibrand, which is the fact that, in politics we have pragmatism, we have, opportunism, and then we have Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She wants to be, the farmer's daughter for the rural voters in America when she wants to say, I'm Kirsten, shot.
This is what I stand for. Vote for me or not.
Yeah, she's not that person.
But none of it's true. And in politics, you also have political opportunism, and that's what defines Kirsten Gillibrand. This is someone who, when she ran as a member of Congress, she joined the Blue Dog Coalition. She had an A rating from the NRA. Now she has an F rating. She at one point talked about the need to increase deportations for illegal immigrants living in the country. Now she wants to get rid of ICE. This is someone who promised voters that she would carry out her term for Senate just recently in the last election, and now is running for president. So she is a complete and utter fraud, and that is going to be the biggest thing that prevents her from ever getting into the White House.
And Democrats are going to be her regulator, her governor, because they're going to be interacting before they actually even get to the president. Guys, great debate. We need another hour. I'm going to have to talk to her. Maybe we can come back.
I mean, I'm sure you could put in a word, right?
Absolutely.
Get some more time. Yeah.
With no one here.
Producers.
Not even the robot cameras. Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead, Michael Cohen will reportedly call President Trump a criminal during his public testimony on Capitol Hill. And he'll probably do it behind closed doors today. How will we know he's telling the truth? A judge will weigh in. And should lakes have the same rights as people? That question is on the ballot today, and we're serious.
And I think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization. We're going to have a signing summit, which is even better. So hopefully we can get that completed, but we're getting very, very close.
Right to our Fox News alert, President Trump is set to land in Hanoi, Vietnam in just a few hours.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 9:30 Eastern time. The president gearing up for high-stakes denuclearization talks with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam. It's going to officially start tomorrow.
That's right. The North Korean leader receiving a red carpet welcome upon arriving for Summit 2.0 is what they're calling it. The talks are expected to begin over a private dinner. Let's bring in Ed Henry, our Fox News chief national correspondent, live in Vietnam for us. Ed, good morning. How you doing?
Great to see you. Fantastic.
All right, let's talk about what to expect. We know the president arrives in a couple of hours today. We know that he's going to meet with the Vietnamese leaders. But do you sense that there's a direct game plan, or is the president going to see what he's got when he looks across the table?
I think it's the latter, because the president signaled way back last June when we were in Singapore covering the first round of this summit that he likes to get a read on someone and go with it in terms of what he has long called the art of the deal. In fact, I think it was at the news conference at the end of the Singapore summit where the president said within 5 seconds of being with someone in a room, he can get a read on whether or not he's going to get a deal or not, which way they're headed. This is someone who he's lavished praise on. They've exchanged letters. President obviously has to be careful about that because Kim Jong-un is somebody who's got a litany of human rights abuses on his ledger, who's murdered people, ordered the killings of people, I should say, has an awful human rights record. But he's somebody who's now at the peace table saying that maybe he will give up his nuclear arsenal if the U.S. will lift the boot off the throat in terms of economic sanctions. So the president clearly has a gut feeling that there may be a deal here to be had. And so there's a lot of naysayers trying to talk this down. But you got to give the president credit for trying to make it work.
Yeah, we saw him arrive in the armored train, and then he got in a limo, and there were bodyguards that were surrounding him, apparently some running alongside the limo.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty standard. I mean, look, this is someone, a dictator, who's concerned about his grip on power. He does not often leave his home turf of Pyongyang. There's a reason for that. Remember, he's ordered the killing of a brother, other relatives, political rivals in North Korea. And there, you know, as I think Newt Gingrich said here on the program yesterday, there's only so many summits that Kim Jong-un is going to do out of a fear that when he leaves his country, it might be hard to come back at some point if the military in North Korea turns on him. So that's another screw this president has to turn, which is that time is going to run out for Kim Jong-un eventually, whether it's his grip on power back home or a combination of that with the economy that, you know, he's very cash poor because of these U.S. sanctions. And so the pressure is on Kim Jong-un, even though you heard a lot of Democrats and many in the mainstream media who say the pressure's on President Trump. President Trump's the one at the table trying to get a deal here.
Ed, you're over there trying to giving this summit a fair shake. What will happen? What won't happen? What do we need to get?
Sure.
Well, a lot of the media here, and Democrats, and in many ways are the same thing, they're already throwing cold water on the summit. Listen to them.
Just as he's meeting with Kim Jong-un, Michael Cohen is on Capitol Hill. He has 2 private meetings and 1 public testimony on Capitol Hill. How could that impact the negotiations we see in North Korea? What could we see the president give away?
Let's just be frank. He felt like he got a good press after the last one, and he figures another photo op might do that.
Now, you can bet the president that President Trump will want to have a news conference to get attention for any progress he makes with Kim on the nuclear threat.
So, Ed, I mean, the timing of the Michael Cohen stuff, not unintentional, not lost on anybody.
No, that the Democrats are trying to make a political point. And when you have folks in the media saying, oh, gosh, the president of the United States wants to have a positive news conference. He wants to have a good photo op. I've covered a lot of presidents, Democrats and Republicans. Sure, they want to get good publicity. But the point is not that. The point is to get some substance, is to get a deal here. And if this president can do a number of things, one thing that might be on the table is a formally ending the Korean War. There was an armistice decades ago, but they did not formally end the war. If that's on the table here and they get that done, and Kim Jong-un feels like he gets that out of the way and gives him some room to then start cutting deals with the president in terms of denuclearization, and by the way, they move closer to denuclearization and avoid a nuclear war, that would be a pretty darn good thing for any president. So why focus on quote-unquote positive press? How about focusing on avoiding a nuclear war?
And I think
That's
it's a good point
thing for all of us.
And our allies love the fact that we're doing this. It says a lot. South Korea and Japan said, I love what you're doing to the region and even having these talks.
As does China. They don't want a nuclear war either.
All right, Ed, we'll check with you soon.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
Good to see you guys.
Jillian has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
So good morning, and we continue to follow this story out of Colorado. And investigators start searching a landfill today in hopes of finding the remains of a missing Colorado mom. Kelsey Barrett disappeared on Thanksgiving Day, and her body has yet to be found. Her fiance, Patrick Frazee, was arrested and charged in her murder. Frazee's girlfriend told investigators he beat Barrett to death before burning her body. Police say it could take months to find her remains. Today, voters in Ohio will decide if Lake Erie should have the same rights as a human being. The Lake Erie Bill of Rights would allow people to sue on the lake's behalf over environmental issues. Supporters say it's necessary to protect the lake years after it was contaminated with toxic algae. Critics say the move would poorly affect industrial job growth in Toledo. A 7-year-old brings down the house. Watch the national anthem. Listen to it. I want to just keep listening to her. Malaya Emma going viral for her performance at a UCLA basketball game. The former American Idol contestant has done this before, dominating a performance at a soccer game last fall. That is a voice you could just listen to all day long.
It is, and I love she uses the hands.
I know.
Too.
Right.
Makes us all wonder.
Someone else who uses her hands when she gives the weather is Janice Dean. Am I right, Janice?
Right. Yes, thank you, Brian. And look at these wonderful people that are here with us today. What's your name? Where are you from?
Cynthia, Corpus Christi, Texas.
And?
Jeannie from Apopka, Florida.
I'm David from Apopka, Florida.
You're with her.
Absolutely.
And happy retirement, my girlfriend.
Thank you.
I can't wait to be you someday. Let's take a look at the maps real quick, and I'll show you. It is cold. It's not Florida, that's for sure. I might come with you. 26 in New York. It is 0 Minneapolis, so you've got that cold air that's coming in from Canada. Wind chills below 0 across portions of the northern plains and the upper Midwest. All right, a little bit of lake effect snow over the Great Lakes and the northern plains. Then we're dealing with this big storm system moving into California. Heavy rainfall for the Bay Area, and we could see upwards of 3 to 4 feet of snow. So that's your forecast as we head through the next 48 hours. All right, wave to Steve, Ainsley, and Brian in the studio where they're all warm.
Right, and Pete.
I'll play Steve any day.
Oh, sorry, Pete.
Janice,
That's
Stop.
Pete
It's
Hegseth,
okay.
everybody. Big round of applause for Pete Hegseth in for Steve Ducey.
Why, thank you, Janice. Thank you. All right. Well, transgender athletes running back into the headlines in one state after 2 runners win a girls' qualifying race. One runner who lost to them says it's not quite fair. She'll join us. This is a real headline live.
Plus, Michael Cohen will reportedly call President Trump a criminal during his public testimony on Capitol Hill tomorrow. How will we know that he's telling the truth? The judge is here to weigh in.
How you doing, sir? Good to see you.
And I think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization. We're going to have a signing summit, which is even better. So hopefully we can get that completed, but we're getting very, very close.
Right to our Fox News alert, President Trump is set to land in Hanoi, Vietnam in just a few hours.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 9:30 Eastern time. The president gearing up for high-stakes denuclearization talks with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam. It's going to officially start tomorrow.
That's right. The North Korean leader receiving a red carpet welcome upon arriving for Summit 2.0 is what they're calling it. The talks are expected to begin over a private dinner. Let's bring in Ed Henry, our Fox News chief national correspondent, live in Vietnam for us. Ed, good morning. How you doing?
Great to see you. Fantastic.
All right, let's talk about what to expect. We know the president arrives in a couple of hours today. We know that he's going to meet with the Vietnamese leaders. But do you sense that there's a direct game plan, or is the president going to see what he's got when he looks across the table?
I think it's the latter, because the president signaled way back last June when we were in Singapore covering the first round of this summit that he likes to get a read on someone and go with it in terms of what he has long called the art of the deal. In fact, I think it was at the news conference at the end of the Singapore summit where the president said within 5 seconds of being with someone in a room, he can get a read on whether or not he's going to get a deal or not, which way they're headed. This is someone who he's lavished praise on. They've exchanged letters. President obviously has to be careful about that because Kim Jong-un is somebody who's got a litany of human rights abuses on his ledger, who's murdered people, ordered the killings of people, I should say, has an awful human rights record. But he's somebody who's now at the peace table saying that maybe he will give up his nuclear arsenal if the U.S. will lift the boot off the throat in terms of economic sanctions. So the president clearly has a gut feeling